What's up guys, Galaxy King here, and today I've got my vampire deck profile for you guys. In my personal opinion, I think that any zombie deck can be a really good rogue strategy, just because decks like vampires have access to some really powerful cards like Unizombie, Mizuki, and Zombie World, and really almost all zombie cards in their own respect are really amazing. And yeah, I think this deck is really fun to play with. So I'm going to start with the vampire monsters in the main deck. Starting off, I have two vampire Scarlet Scourge. I have some mixed feelings about this card because really it doesn't do that much for the whole vampire strategy, apart from it just being a monster reborn. When it's summoned by paying 1,000 life points, you target a vampire in your graveyard and then special summon it. Other than that, it doesn't really do much other than just being a beat stick and a monster reborn for your vampire monsters. But it is searchable. I was playing this at 1, but 2 is probably the ideal ratio to play in this deck. But it's up to you whether or not you want to play 2 or 1 of this. Personally, 2 is fine the way it is. And then probably the best vampire monster that we have at the moment, other than Vampire Sucker, is 3 Vampire Fraulein. It can really put out a lot of damage, but it does cost you a lot of your life points depending on how much you pay. It has a limit of 3,000 life points, so you pay life points in multiples of 100, but the max you can pay is 3,000, and then a vampire you control gains that much attack points. It doesn't even have to be vampire, it can be any zombie monster, so you can play this really in any zombie deck that you would like. And I've seen a lot of people mixing up the ratios of this. Some people play 1 or 2. I think 3 is ideal because it's searchable in this deck and it can do a lot of damage, and it works as a really good extender. And also it works well with your Retainer and Familiar if you brick with it, so you can discard it and then get Retainer and Familiar's effects off. But really, 3 Vampire Fraulein is what I play. I think it's the best ratio at the moment because it's still a really good card. And then for your searches of the deck, I have 3 Vampire Familiar and 3 Vampire Retainer. These search out your entire deck, and they both have the same effect where they're in the graveyard. If they're in the graveyard, you can send a vampire card from your hand or field to the graveyard and then special summon them, but they're banished when they leave the field. And then if either of these cards are special summoned, and it doesn't have to be from the graveyard, it can be from Shadow Vampire or anything really, you can pay 500 life points. Familiar searches you out a vampire monster, whereas Retainer searches out a vampire spell and trap. And these two work the same with each other, so if you have Retainer in the graveyard, you can discard Familiar, and then you can discard another card to get Familiar back again. So they really work well with each other, and as I said before, you can use Vampire Fraulein. If you brick with it, you can discard it and then get one of these back on the field. So these are just the searches of the deck. 3 is ideal because, again, you can discard themselves and then they still get their effects off. So they work really well as in the ratios that they are. For the last vampire we play in the deck is 1 Shadow Vampire. Just like Vampire Scarlet Scourge, I have mixed feelings about this card because when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a dark vampire monster from your deck. But unfortunately only that monster can attack for the rest of the turn. So I was playing 2 of this, but I put it back down to 1 because if it's normal or special summoned, then it would be a lot better. You'd play more than 1 of this, but only being normal summoned to get the effect off can be really annoying. There are cards in this deck that allow you to get an additional normal summon, but again, it's just a really sticky card, and honestly I wouldn't play more than 1 of this unless we get an updated version of this card that says normal or special summoned. But for now, because this card is searchable with Retainer, no sorry, not Retainer, Familiar, you play it as a one-off and it just works as a fun extender. And then for your other zombie monsters, I have the traditional zombie engine, triple Uni-Zombie and triple Shiranui Solitaire. Uni-Zombie just because it's a zombie monster and it works well in really every zombie deck, and it also helps set up the graveyard with your familiars and retainers and also any other zombies or vampires that you need in the graveyard. And then Shiranui Solitaire because it's a zombie lone fire blossom really, and it can search out your zombie tuners with 0 defense. So it can search out Uni-Zombie and it can also search out Glow Up Bloom, which I'm playing 2 of in this deck because it works really well with this deck. So this is just a traditional zombie engine that you play in any zombie deck really. And then for the other zombie monsters that I play 2 Doom King Baladruk and 2 Glow Up Bloom. Doom King Baladruk because personally I think it's one of the best zombie monsters that the game has at the moment, because this card with Zombie World is so amazing, because when your opponent activates a zombie, when a zombie monster's effect is activated, you can banish a card on the field, and also if your opponent activates a card effect, you can negate that. And both of their effects are really powerful, and Baladruk can just keep coming back again and again, even if it's in the graveyard. It can just keep coming back. It's honestly, it's a really powerful card. And then 2 Glow Up Bloom because this works really well in this deck because it can search out almost all of your vampires. It can search out Fraulein, Shadow Vampire, Scarlet Scourge and Baladruk. So it's a really fun card to play in this deck. I play it as a 2-off because you don't want to brick with it in your hand. You usually want to send it with Uni-Zombie or Foolish Burial to get the effect off to search or special summon a high level vampire monster or Doom King Baladruk. But these ratios at the moment is fine. And then I have 1 Necro Banshee. It just helps you get your Zombie World onto the field and just works as a good extender. And I do play 3 Zombie World in this deck because it's a zombie deck, and Zombie World honestly is just an amazing card. And then for the last 2 zombies that I play in the deck is 2 Mizuki. 2 honestly is fine because Mizuki is a really powerful and good card in any zombie deck, but 2 at the moment because it can be very bricky, and with vampires you do brick a lot, so I'm trying to make this deck as consistent as possible, and 2 Mizuki is what I found works the best in vampires. So 2 Mizuki is fine the way it is. For the spells, I have 3 Vampire's Domain and 1 Vampire's Desires. Vampire's Domain is that card that allows you to get an additional normal summon by paying 500 life points. And what's good about this card as well is when your vampire inflicts battle damage to your opponent, each time you gain life points equal to the damage your opponent took. So let's say you attack with Scarlet Scourge and then you use Fraulein's effect to pay 3,000 life points and get Scarlet Scourge up to 5,200 life points. And then depending what they get over, if they go over any monsters or direct attack, you gain the difference or that amount of life points. So it's a really good card, and it really comes in handy with additional normal summons, link spam, in case you want to summon another monster, and then it helps you gain more life points, so it's a really fun card. And then Vampire's Desires, again, like most of the cards in this deck, I have mixed feelings of, because it's a Foolish Burial and Monster Reborn in 1, but the cost is what is annoying, because with the Foolish Burial you're probably going to use that more than the Monster Reborn effect. To use the Foolish Burial effect, you have to target a vampire monster you control with a level, and then send another vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level, and then that vampire card you targeted becomes the level of that monster. which honestly is fine, I have no problems with that. But the Monster Reborn effect requires you to tribute a monster first before you can target a monster in the graveyard and special summon it. So the majority of the time you're going to use the Foolish Burial effect more than the Monster Reborn effect. But one honestly is fine because, again, Retainer searches it, and honestly one is fine. Because as I said before, this deck does brick a lot, so you want to try and make this deck as consistent as possible. And then obviously triple Zombie World because it's just a really good card. And then to help with hand traps that slow this deck down, triple Call by the Grave. And it's also a disruption against you're going against a deck that has any cards activate in the graveyard. You can just use Call by the Grave and it just acts as a spare interruption in case you need it. And then the normal Monster Reborn and Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial just helps speed up the deck with your vampires in the graveyard, and Monster Reborn because it's Monster Reborn. And then for the only traps that I play in the deck, I have triple Vampire Domination. This card is so good because if you control a vampire monster, if your opponent activates a spell, trap or monster effect while you control a vampire monster, you can negate and destroy that. And then if it was a monster, you gain life points equal to its attack. So probably the most common zombie board that a normal Zombie World deck can make is Vampire Sucker with Zombie World on the field and Baylodrock. So with Vampire Domination, because Vampire Sucker is a vampire monster, you can use her to get Vampire Domination's effect off. And honestly, Vampire Domination is just a really good disruption for this deck because, again, Retainer searches it and Vampire Sucker can get its effect to go off. So it's a really useful card that you can mix around with the ratios of this card. I play it as free because I think it's a really useful card. And then for the extra deck that I play, I obviously have 2 Vampire Sucker because it's an amazing zombie link monster, and because it's a vampire, you can use other vampire effects in this deck like Domination, which I just mentioned, Domain, and you can use Scarlet Scourge to revive this card as well. And really, because it counts as a vampire monster, it works really well in this deck, and really in every zombie deck that you can think of, Vampire Sucker just helps it amazingly. And then 1 Avenged Savior, because this card is really just an extender and just helps set up the graveyard. So you can get Baylodrock into the graveyard, and then if Zombie World's on the field, you can revive Baylodrock back and just get another extender. And then 1 Borrelsword Dragon, because it's Borrelsword Dragon, it can just go for easy OTKs. Got the Nightmare package, Phoenix and Unicorn, just to help with any problematic spells or traps or any monsters that you want to get rid of. And then 1 Link Rebo, because we have a couple level 1s in the deck that can be used to summon it, and really just because it's Link Rebo, it works well. And then for the Xyz monsters, 1 Dathomir Vampire Sheridian, because it's a useful card to play. It can get rid of some really problematic monsters by sending it to the graveyard, and it doesn't destroy, it just says send, so it's non-targeting removal, and it's really good. And what's really good about that effect as well is that it has another effect where if a monster is sent from the field to the opponent's graveyard, you can attach another Xyz material from this card and then special summon it to your field. So it helps get rid of a lot of problematic monsters, and if your opponent can somehow get that monster back, you can use Sheridian's effect to get it out of their graveyard so they can't summon it back. And then 1 Crimson Knight Vampire Brand. It's the same as Vampire Sheridian but different because you detach a material from this card and then target a monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your field. So really that effect is fine the way it is. And then 1 Doom Chimera Dragon. I play Doom Chimera Dragon because it's a level 5 and we do play quite a few level 5s in this deck, and it can also, if it gets over a monster, you can place a bricky card that in your opponent's graveyard on top of their deck. So if they draw into it and they can't do anything, they're gonna have to hopefully skip their turn or scoop. So Doom Cameo Dragon is just a really fun card to play with, and it can be useful in certain situations. Then for the Synchros I play in this deck, I have one Shiranui Shogun Saga and one PSY Framelord Omega. Shiranui Shogun Saga because it can get really big and it's just a really good zombie synchro monster. And then PSY Framelord Omega just for that spare interruption. And then one Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon because, like Shiranui Shogun Saga, this card can get really big because it gains 100 attack points for every zombie in the graveyard. And then with Zombie World, they'll also go for zombie monsters in the opponent's graveyard. So it can get really big, and Vampire Fraudulent can also give this card additional attack points. So really I just play Red Eyes Necro Dragon because it can get really big. And then for the last monster that I play in the extra deck, I have one Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. You might find this a bit weird, but I play this because during the battle phase, Odd Eyes Meteor Burst prevents your opponent from activating monster effects during the battle phase. So if you try to use Vampire Fraudulent's effect and they have a monster that can negate that, they can't respond to that, so you're going to get Vampire Fraudulent's effect off. And really, Odd Eyes Meteor Burst is just a fun tech card that I play because I don't play any restriction cards in this deck. One tech card that you can play in this deck if you want to side it is Gozen Match. I was playing that, but after playing with it for a while, I discovered that it's probably best as a side card unless you're going against a deck that runs multiple attributes. Now the reason I play Gozen Match is because all of your vampire monsters and the majority of your zombie monsters are dark attribute. So you can play Gozen Match and not have to worry about your plays being hinged because the majority of the time the cards that you summon are dark attribute. And really that's it for the vampire deck. Please let me know what you thought of the deck in the comments and where you think I can improve on it. I would greatly appreciate that. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll talk to you all in the next video. Take care.